Yeah. Well, no, actually. This is.
Oh, I was sitting right there. Yeah. Okay, let's get started. Thank you for coming. I've got a beautiful summer evening out there, and I'm sure we're already going to be watching that sunset, but I feel like this is an important topic for the community, and glad to have all of your input. We're gonna make a presentation tonight, but we'd also like to encourage, public participation, comments and questions that you might have. We realize that the island community has different levels of understanding of where this project is at. And it's gone through a lot of stages in the last couple of years. So, the intent is really to bring everybody up to an even level of understanding. And then talk about the next steps, how we'll proceed. My name is Dave Brunner. I'm chair of the facilities committee. Also on our committee, we have Tom Phipps, our fire chief, Ralph Monroe, Chris Loader, and Richard Eckel is the select board liaison this time. Former board members are Beth Wiles, who was chair at the beginning of our efforts, Martha Dowdy, Beth Button, and then, of course, other town and select board liaisons. Vika has been courageously attending every meeting that we've had. Bob Ernst, Eliza Jane, Mark Dyer has offered his expertise at a few meetings. So, a great collective effort, and it's started. So, we're gonna do about a 20-25 minute presentation, and hopefully we get through it in a succinct manner, and then we'll open it up for questions. The meeting is being recorded, so it will be available for playback later. The slide deck will be available on the town website. Be able to look at that. And there's some additional addenda slides that won't be discussed tonight, but it's more detailed schedules and things like that if you're really interested in a deep dive. Okay, so why are we here doing this work? The town has the municipal responsibility to provide adequate facilities that will allow the community.
You have to project.
No.
No, it did it the other day. We just
Okay.
changed the battery. All right. You just have to open the battery and.
How's this? Everybody hear me okay? It will allow the community to maintain a functional and effective fire and rescue service. We're at a point now in the community where there are factors that are affecting the effectiveness of that to occur. We'll get into that. And we also, part of our charge is to look at the town office needs. Town office needs to provide administrative function for effective, efficient town government. Okay, next. So our purpose and charge, the committee was started in 2022 to evaluate municipal facilities, focusing on emergency fire rescue. Look at both long and short-term solutions in order to meet the town's needs, solicit public input, make recommendation to the select board. And we are at a point now where we have a proposed plan to implement with collective input and approval. So I think on the next slide. Okay, look back. So we started the process in 22 by hiring Port City Architects. They're an architectural firm in Portland that specializes in public safety building design. They've worked with over 25 municipalities in Maine. They're currently working on 6 public safety buildings that I know of that have various levels of public funding. We're relying on them for both design expertise and helping us through funding strategies. So they provided a needs assessment, existing conditions assessment, and design studies that went through about a year's period. And that finished up in the fall of 23 with their draft report. Some of you may have come to one of the meetings when they were presenting some of their work. That resulted in a fairly significant solution, both scope and cost wise, that we contemplated and basically really shelved it, but I think it was just put on hold for a bit while we sort of got a handle on other financial issues that the town had challenges with. In the meantime, we did a small interim town office improvement in 24. Because office was improved, we got some new furnishing, so the clerk and other workers there could have a comfortable ergonomic situation to work. We probably did some of that recently. And then the committee went back and tried to decide how we might move this project. Was that recall? About that, okay, good. So last fall, we came together and said, well, let's not just let this languish, let's come together with some sort of proposal where we can keep some momentum going on this. And in terms of responsible cost approach, we looked at a reduced scope. We evaluated the needs and the prioritizing the needs into the highest priority ones that we could address with the least amount of cost or reduced cost. We went back to Port City, the select board was receptive to that idea. We went back to Port City, and they did an extra service design, what we're calling phase 1 of the design. So it's the first component for the full project. All right. So we could summarize the existing conditions and the primary municipal needs to basically 3 categories. The first would be outdated facilities. The fire stations, as most of you may know, is under the category of essential facilities in the building code, which has a higher level of structural capacity that's required. The idea is that this would be one of the last buildings standing in the event of a major earthquake or other natural disaster, hurricane, for instance, to provide emergency command control and, of course, protect the equipment that will be used to do rescue. The existing building is an unreinforced CMU block construction that is not IDC code compliant for essential facilities. We've had 2 structural engineers look at the building in terms of upgrading, doing renovation, and possible additions, and both have said the cost would be prohibitive to try to modify the existing building into one that would be code compliant. There's no sprinklers in the building, which is a possible hazard in the event of a fire starting. There's no vehicular exhaust removal, which is kind of standard in modern public safety building designs. Worker safety, we look at things like exhaust removal when calls are going and trucks are starting. There's a cramped apparatus space in there now, which gets to building area limitations. The amount of apparatus and gear storage that's in this building currently could easily fit in the space nearly twice that size. And here's a graphic that starts to show that. The plan on the right is 6 pieces of apparatus. The blue are the ambulances. And the pink blocks are the fire trucks. We have tanker 1 that sits behind the primary ambulance. Engine 8 and 4 and 9 are sort of cramped in there. Tetris block situation. Difficult to move around. Any of you that have been in there, it's fairly obvious. There's sometimes inches between vehicles. So in terms of, mobilizing and getting, firefighters, gear set up and onto the vehicle and out is not very efficient. The graphic on the left shows, Port City's analysis of the existing, square footage, that we have in the building now, 3,600 square feet, and the recommended square footage is quite a bit larger, as you see there proportionally. Most of that is in apparatus space because those are the bigger areas in the building, and then the support areas. All that. Okay, and then the third factor, which you saw on the previous slide, was the changes in volunteerism. We're going to let Ralph talk a little bit about that.
So yeah, this slide is pretty basic, straightforward. We have more rescue calls and fire calls than we've ever had before. We have fewer volunteers than we've ever had before. I think when I joined 45 years ago, we had roughly 10 people under the age of 30. Now we're looking at 4 or 5 under the age of 50. So it's significantly older. And it is kind of a young man's game. It's a lot of work to fight fires, stretch hoses and everything. But our big thing is EMS calls. We can't have a ambulance go out the door without at least 1 EMT on it. That's federal law. Just can't. So we have to make sure we have 7 EMTs now covering 24/7. In roughly 2004, we started having per diems come over when we were part of Cumberland and do coverage. We have gotten back into that. We're trying to do daytime coverage over here, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's helping out. Everybody on rescue, I think, enjoys a little bit of time off in the summer. Like everybody likes to go out and do summer things on the boat and camping or whatever. But the 7 EMTs have to make sure that everything's covered, and that's quite a stress on everybody. We can't do 24-hour coverage because we don't have any place for somebody to stay. And that would be even better. I don't think there's any EMTs on the department that would argue with that. So that's where we're moving forward, hopefully with that. Certifications and more. When my father joined the rescue, I think he took it was the first aid class and he was on the rescue. Now the EMT class is around 240 or 50 hours of classroom to take the class. And then every 2 years, you have to have so many hours of continuing education in different categories. So there's way more stuff you have to do. Also, volunteerism is down across the board, across the country. I talked to firefighters and chiefs in California, Texas, even Canada, East Sussex, outside of England. It's the same thing over there too. It's just not as easy for people to volunteer. Used to be 2 people.
More towards the middle, so you get picked up at a place.
Like phase 2. So volunteerism is it's a dying thing. I think in the 45 years that I've been on the department, it's always been a paid volunteer department. So we used to get, we get a little bit of money, it's getting more and more money because it makes a difference. And that's where we're at.
Brown. So let's get into some of the factors of the project. The red area here is the existing fire station and town office site, which includes the septic field and the radio tower and now the broadband central frame unit. The green is, and so the road running vertically is North Road, obviously, then that's Division Point Road running horizontally across the top of the green parcel, which is 15 acres of town-owned property. So we see this as an opportunity to develop or partially develop that property without incurring any additional property acquisition expense. With Port City, we looked at two basic options. One is an addition and renovation to the existing building. And the other is building a new building, two basic approaches. There are site constraints on the existing site, and since we need to add so much area to satisfy our needs, there are setback encroachments. The septic field is on the town office side. Such that just configuring all of the extra space was not a rectilinear space. It had a jogging and just didn't make a lot of functional sense. And then the ill-advised construction cost to upgrade the existing building, which I mentioned earlier, is a detriment to this option. And then thinking about operations during construction, it would be a chaotic situation to try to renovate that building and still maintain the fire and rescue service out of it. So it's, the advantages of option B would be, it's ideal for construction phase and we can continue operating on the existing building, build a new building on the town property. The compliance with a new building for the essential facilities is easy to achieve that way and more cost efficient than renovation. At the point where the fire and safety move out of the existing building, the town office can expand into that space, which pretty much equals the space requirement that Port City's come up with for their needs. We're also considering, I've talked quite a bit about sheriff's quarters. We realize that that's a situation in flux now, and will need some addressing in the near and future term. I think the space in the final thing was in like 800 square foot, one bedroom unit that we could fit into the building. And it's appropriate to use those uses for the existing building because we don't need to upgrade it structurally as much as we would being a fire station. So this was the first report that Port City did, which addressed all of the needs, both fire and rescue and town office. Nearly 9,000 square foot building, complete renovation of the existing building for town office and the sheriff quarters included. And the cost, and this may be the number that a lot of you are familiar with sometime back, $6 million for the new building, $1.5 million for the town office renovation. Well, those are big numbers. So we looked at that, considered the project scope in the context of other challenges, financial challenges the town has now in terms of capital improvements. And another key point in the timeline was the finance committee started their work in earnest about this time, or maybe a little before, studying revenue, spending projections, and debt service limits that the town can handle in a reasonable manner. So our plan then goes to a phased approach. We recommend a reduced project scope, responsible spending, dealing with the most critical needs of the department. And the select board, this was presented in the fall of 25. And then subsequently, we had Port City engaged to prepare the drawings and graphics you see over there on the easels. Basically, it's a little less than 4,000 square foot building now, but a little less than half of the original scheme. Primarily addressing the needs of the EMS, the rescue services. Which ties into the volunteerism issue and crew quarters that would be needed for the overnight, per diems. Two dedicated ambulance bays, so a very efficient release for those, and then a third apparatus bay for one fire vehicle. So we have 3 in the new building and then 3 in the existing building, 3 bays. Daytime and overnight accommodation for per diems, and I guess we're looking at these also as maybe municipal accommodations, so they might also serve overnight snow plowing personnel, people that might come from mainland to do equipment testing that needs to run overnight, or there's emergency center operations where somebody needs to stay over there for command control. Those the overnight rooms can function for that purpose. And then a small amount of support functions for the EMS. So the overall site plan looks something like this. North Road is running horizontally across the screen. Above it is the existing building. The red is the fire station uses and the green is the town office. The new building down in the lower left has an paved apron out the North Road. And you'll notice the circulation pattern of drives coming in both to the side, so responders can come in without crossing the apron. We spent a lot of time looking at that, so it'll be efficient and safe. And then the future phase of the building will be designed in a manner that would allow for future phases to add on in a very clean, efficient manner without redoing what had already been built. So this portion of the site, we would include site infrastructure, well, septic system that we would like to recommend be sized to handle maybe some additional functions if the sheriff's orders needed to happen here. If we didn't think that phase 2 could be accommodated in the existing building for whatever reason, or needed to happen sooner. There may be a modular building approach or backyard ADU sort of structure that equal cost that could be added to that and then take advantage of the water supply and septic system. There's plenty of space there also, that maybe could be used for public parking areas or staging for extra vehicles from Wharf Road. Okay, so here's the plan. On the right, if you look at the blue area, the dark blue are the 2 ambulance vehicles. The pink is the larger fire engine. The orange spaces are support functions, a wash and decontamination room for cleaning gear after calls. There's gear storage, med storage, janitorial and other storage room. The yellow is the data room and the office function. So this room is about maybe half again as large as the Ross room, so it could be used multi-purpose, training sessions. They use per diems are there, don't have any other place to go, they can stay there. They're at the station, then at that point can perform other maintenance functions or other tasks. And the green would be the 4 bunk rooms, those are about 10 by 12 each. Yeah. Access to a bathroom and then a corridor accessing out in both directions. The plan on the left is the existing building, the 3 apparatus bays. You can see how clean it works to have 1 vehicle per bay.
That's a luxury.
Okay, here's our thanks rendering of the view from North Road, the wide apron. Access around the sides, it's nice south facing, so the snow melts in the front. It has a nice appearance to it, so. Okay, so that's generally the design of the revised phase 1 approach, and now the big question is, how do we pay for this?
You would have paused for any questions up to this point, or?
Not quite yet, we're gonna hold you to have a couple of minutes. So I'm the most recent member of the committee, so I got asked to help out with this part. So we spent a fair amount of time with the the finance committee with the town to talk about how these things get paid. Port City provided a lot of information about other public safety buildings that have been funded and built in Maine. And helped us with an estimate at this phase based on a square footage for this style of building. They built in a 15% island contingency. We know everything costs more out here to construct, as well as the project contingency. So the bottom line is this building would be roughly $2.8 million. And that's based on these preliminary estimates. There would be more detailed design and refinement for that once we get the go ahead from the town to proceed. The funding strategy, as I mentioned, was coordinated with the finance committee and the larger town budget so that it fit into the projected debt ceiling that we've been talking about this year. There is a fair amount of support for these types of projects through congressional discretionary spending, we refer to as CDS grants. This project would likely qualify based on historic success we've had in the state of Maine getting these kinds of public safety buildings funded. But as with anything in the current administration, nothing's definite. But if history holds true, we could ask for more, but a 50-50 split might be reasonable at this stage of the planning process to work around. As we've learned, these kinds of requests require some skin in the game from the town to really be considered. We've started a reserve fund in the last town meeting that was funded to help with this planning, but we'd have to show support for our portion of the fundraising of the town. Assuming that 50% match, we would issue a bond at 1.4 million. The annual debt service on that would be just less than $100,000 a year based on certain financial assumptions and current market rates. So for example, that would be approximately a 3% increase to the town budget. If you take a $5,000 property tax bill, that would be approximately $150 per year. So without the CDS matching funds, we step back and, this is already a plan B from reconsidering the approach that was proposed a number of years ago that David mentioned. But if the CDS funding did not come through, we would have to step back and reevaluate all of the fire and rescue capital spending scenarios and get a sharp pencil out, so to speak. The building of this facility would then free us up to plan subsequent phases of renovations for the town office and the other fire station needs. But those are dependent on having the equipment out of that building and into this building. So I mentioned working with the finance committee about the debt servicing. There's a lot of capital expenditures based in the town, and we thought it would be important to show what this proposed project would look like in that total stack. And in this graphic, we're showing the full $2.8 million expense. The finance committee has talked about being comfortable with $1 million in debt servicing over the next 6 years, and many of these numbers for these other projects are rough estimates. We've done a fair amount of work with Port City to get to what we think is a good working number for an estimate. The timeline for this is we would need some level of town commitment this November to get the go ahead. We would proceed with the CDS funding grant. Those applications happen in March, so spring of 2027, with notifications later in 27. That would enable us to proceed with final design and engineering drawings and preparation, such that construction could start in summer of 2028 into spring of 2029, with the idea of occupancy in the summer of 2029.
What's
Congressional discretionary spending.
Thank you.
Okay, for sure. Tom.
So just a few final thoughts here, takeaways for tonight. The primary one is looking at a responsible spending approach. We own the island here, we don't have a lot of money to throw around and doing the most with the least is sort of our mantra that we like to keep in mind here. The EMS coverage is really the critical aspect that is driving a lot of the proposed solutions here. And it basically comes down to two options. Either we develop municipal facilities that can support the per diem needs as they come online, or EMS occurs by non-local services, and I don't think we ever want to see that day come, but what would end up happening was we'd be relying on Life Flight, which has irregular flight response times for mainland rescue units, Long Island, for instance. As we know, time means life. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the foresight that we need to approach these projects with. They take a while, both with acquiring the funding through the critical path milestones that Tom talked about. It doesn't happen quickly, and we can't get to the point where we say we really need to get this done when it's a 2.5 year process. And I almost like to liken it to climate change and the effects that we're predicting, and how it's affecting our island, where, maybe there were occurrences that occurred once every 5 years, and then it became once every year, and now we're, it might be happening once a month. And the per diem requirement sort of feels like that. We can't really exactly predict when it's going to reach a more critical state where we need a facility for that. Not to mention financial commitment to support the staffing. But I think we know that it's coming. Okay, with that, we'll wrap it up. We did pretty good. So let's just open it up to questions. If you wouldn't mind just stepping up so the owl can record. We've got a Zoom session going here, so other people might be watching this and then be speaking. And then the panel will, the committee will direct questions to them to answer. Who would like to start us off?
I'm never back. I think smartly, I can introduce myself, I'm Jim Van Fleet. Smartly, the fire department has already set up a charitable vehicle, a 501c3, I think, in order for the community to support some of your services. I don't know whether there are limitations to that 501c3 and whether that could be a source of capital expenditures from there into this project, whether there are any rules in your 501c3 documents, or the municipality has any reason not to be able to accept charitable contributions. But I throw that out there. Could well be grants, maybe somebody's already looked into that, but there's a lot of evidence on this island of wonderful philanthropy, so this might be another opportunity.
Absolutely, there's no, we do have rules that what we can spend the money on. Nothing that says we can't spend money on the building. And definitely open, if somebody wants to put money towards this, that's an easy yes.
And the town doesn't have any kind of a policy that wouldn't accept that, because it would be a municipal building.
Not that we're aware of, unless somebody else wants to speak up about it. You could, I'd like to say on the school project, for instance, we had some people generously contribute to some furnishings at the end. It wasn't really necessarily the hard construction cost, but it seemed like an appropriate gifting opportunity.
There, every year at annual town meetings, there is a warrant article that allows select board to accept up to a certain dollar value. And so it would with something like this, when it's probably larger contributions, a larger sum amount of money, it would be a warrant article through a town meeting that would allow people to donate to the town and then allow the select board to take grant money towards a specific project. So it was something that would need to go through a town meeting vote, to be very specific.
I would just add a little bit to the CDS funding approach. I think we call ourselves cautiously optimistic about that whole process. We know it's political, it's not a given. But we've seen, some recent, recommendation of quite a large amount of funds. I mean, into the like $30 and $40 million range for a dozen or so projects from both Susan Collins, Angus King, and Pingree office. And the criteria for that, is based on town size. If you're under 2,000 population, you are able to achieve up to 75% federal funding. So, I mean, it may be a scenario where we get a commitment from the town for, say, up to a certain amount, but then we go in fairly strongly about, well, maybe we would like 75%, we least try for that, in which case the entire bond would need to be used and we could, save that extra debt service. Yeah.
Hey there, so less than 2 years ago, the town had a survey sent out to all the residents and. Props to the fire and rescue, they asked, what do you think is working well on this island? And the most responses were fire and rescue service. They asked what could be improved upon? And there were 200 responses to that, and not single one said fire and rescue. But on the kind of the inverse of that, they asked, what do you think the priority should be for the town? Stone wharf, obviously, barging, solid waste, there's 5 or 6 things. And as far as a priority, only 6 respondents said a new fire and rescue station ranked there. In fact, it got the most responsive for the least important priority. And in fact, they had a section for write-in stuff, besides this list of 6 things, what are other things you think are a priority? And several other things, like even Sunset, got more favorability for a new fire and rescue station. So I gotta ask, maybe the select board, maybe this committee, where do you feel the support is for this?
So I think it's an educational thing, and that's why we're here tonight, and that's what we've been working on. So, I do, really like all the, pats on the back from the community, saying we're doing a great job. The problem is the community doesn't know how thin ice we're running. So having 7 EMTs, it's not sustainable. We're gonna have lapse in coverage at some point. Like I said, when I started 45 years ago, if you was to do a graph of volunteerisms, it's gonna be up and down, but it's going down. And I don't see any change there. It's gonna continue to go down. The personnel's getting older, the run volume is higher. So we need to make sure everybody understands and make an informed decision. If you vote against it, that's your decision. But just make a informed decision. So David had alluded to the fact that we can't run a rescue without at least 1 EMT. We do have backup plans. Our backup plan is called Yarmouth, Lifeline, Long Island, potentially Found. That's gonna add about an hour to the call. Best case scenario. Nice sunny day, it's gonna take an hour longer than what it takes us now to get somebody to your door if you have an emergency. I don't want to see that happen, but that's the actual tension. So I think it's just, I think everybody sees us doing a great job and we show up quickly. You know, we're geographically constrained, so our response times are really quick. We're in the top third in the whole state on response times. But we only have what we have when we get to your front door, be it fire or EMS. So just bear that in mind. Does that answer the question at all?
I remember the survey, and I'm not being critical of who wrote the questions, but I think the question was, I won't be critical. The question was built a new fire station. The question could have been, you want to maintain fire and rescue service on the island. Then I think you might have had a different response.
Also, I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to get rid of volunteers. We're actually trying to keep the volunteers. And by hiring per diems to come in and alleviate some of the stress of the volunteers, especially in the summertime where everybody wants to go out and do stuff. And the majority of our calls are is June, July, and August, and sometimes into September. That will help us with the burnout factor, so maybe we can retain more volunteers and we won't need to hire as many per diems. It's gonna be a forever changing scale. And definitely 24-hour coverage is going to definitely lessen the burden on volunteers.
I think at the time of the survey, we had the $6 million number floating around out there, so. I think the value per dollar, we might get a little different response if we both consider the cost of this.
Just one last point though, like from everything you said in your response, it sounds like housing is the issue more than necessarily the bays and all that. So like maybe if that's the issue and if we may need municipal employees and a sheriff's, you know, residents or whatever, like maybe it should just be a housing focused project rather than a building for the second rescue. But and I'll stop there, so I don't wanna take too much time.
Let Chris take it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, Jeff, and I'm glad that you brought up the survey, because, you know, I think we all use other parts of the island. And we can see where those other parts aren't serving the island or aren't serving the island to the degree that they should. You know, I've gotten my feet wet on the stone wharf. I know what that looks like when it floods. It floods about, you know, between 10 and 12 days a year. You know, depending on the storm, depending on the, you know, the tide. EMS and rescue and fire services have to be 87 to 100 hours a year. There's cannot be a lapse. That doesn't mean we're active all 8,700 hours a year, but that's the requirement. So one of the things, and when we were filled out survey, I can probably tell you one of the 6 people was that thought that was important. And I think a couple of others were on the committee. But I want to address the focus of the committee initially was to look at the municipal resources, the physical plant of the town, and to identify over a long-term period of time, what were the needs. And one of the first things we did was we made it possible for the town offices to receive improvement. It was something that we, you know, agreed had immediacy. It was something that we were able to budget with a fairly low number. It was voted on by the town and it was executed. This is the next, maybe you can call it a phase 0. We figured out there was an issue, we could address it, let's move forward. The next thing on here is what we've been speaking about here today. This is informational. And we recognized that a $6 million project, which is not expensive for the apparatus that we have. It's not expensive on anywhere in the mainland. $6 million is a very good deal for the emergency facility. What we recognize is that we wouldn't likely want to fund all of that up front. I think every one of us on the board, the town are quite fiscally conservative. And we want to make sure that we could stand up and sort of have the straight face test or the full wallet test, whichever one we prefer. And reflect that, you know, our values and the town's values and what we design. The plans that we have are phased approaches. This is the first and really, I guess now the second, it's a minimum phase. We are not asking for we're not going for gold, we are like, what is the foundation of what we need to maintain service as we look forward for the next 10 to 20 years? And if we design that well and we execute it on it well, does it allow us to add on combining services, whether it be sheriff services or additional bays, so that we can move the equipment across, you know, and actually have not only a town municipal offices, but meeting space for the town, including a space that would be effectively this large. There are a lot of things that we could do. What we recognized is no one's writing us a check for $10 million to do all of that. Let's do the things that we can, that are most critical and will receive the greatest input from, you know, the other services, financial services from our government.
Okay. So I just wanted to finish it, because Jeff's point is, why not just get like a modular or something? So to hire per diems to come over here, we've got 3 people working right now. And it's really difficult to find people to do this work. There's a very small pool of EMTs out there in the whole state, and we're fighting over the same ones. It may sound petty, but I guarantee you, if you get a modular and expect them to go walk across the street or over to the station or whatever, we're not gonna get those people to come here. I know that, I know these EMTs.
So I'm gonna apologize because I'm talking to you guys, but I guess I have to face these guys. So. Is that? It's kind of the doomsday scenario as to why, in my mind, this is a critical need. And it's just my opinion. I know I'm an EMT and on the fire department, so it's a biased opinion. But the thing that really speaks to me about why we need to do this and plan for this now is because there is no fire suppression in the fire bays. We have millions of dollars worth of equipment in those bays. We have lots of lithium batteries in those bays. If there's a fire in one of those bays, all of our equipment is gone. And we have no way to put it out. And if we're in the middle of a drought in the summer, that fire is going to travel. Now, I know this is a doomsday scenario, but do we all have insurance on our houses? You plan for the worst and hope for the best. This is a basic insurance. I mean, I would never buy a car and not put insurance on it. I mean, some of our cars have been kind of crappy and we've just done the minimum, but in 10 years, I don't know that we're gonna have a volunteer fire department, the way things are going, and it's hard to maintain that. And after last summer, I was done because it was extremely stressful last summer. We had 51 calls in 1 quarter. Less than 3 months, some 3 times a day. And now we have a fire department that we are in danger of losing all our equipment if a lithium battery blows. And so I understand, I don't want my taxes to go up. I don't want to pay $6 million for a new building. I'm interested in, you know, whatever funding support we can get, but I also don't want to pay for a new facility after we have a fire and we have to buy 4 new engines and a couple new ambulances rather than pay for a building. So that's, it's a doomsday scenario. I understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just wanted to ask
No problem.
if to talk to that.
That's good.
No, step back. 5 feet away.
About part of the problem that having no EMT or less EMTs now and not getting more volunteers. He actually does keep a list of people who would be interested in having EMT class. But there's a problem with that in the state for the last 3 or 4 years. And if you could talk about that, then people would know what you're struggling to go through to.
So when we used to, 10, 15 years ago, it was really easy to get an EMT class. We had 3 or 4 people that were interested. I called the state, EMS, and they let us run a class. And we usually had people from other islands and off island come to the class. It's not that easy anymore. The last class we had on the island, it took me 2 years to find an instructor. And I know a lot of them, there's just not anybody, there's nobody out there anymore. So it is extremely hard just to get a class and get people through it. We have one person going to New Hampshire now or Massachusetts?
Boston.
What is it?
Boston.
Boston to take an EMT class to be an EMT on that here. So it is very difficult.
Yes,
Don?
So my question is, have you, had an opportunity to reach out to some of the congressional, delegation to kind of begin that discussion, to kind of feel them out, to see, let them know about the project, I guess, that, I know that that's one of the things that they like to know about. Some of their aides are really great about getting in on the ground floor of projects. So anyway, that was one of my questions, and because I think that can go a long way with funding. The other thing is, this is like damn pretty sword, because this program was abolished a while ago, and it only came back, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years, with this government funding. And so we can't put all of our eggs in that basket, but we can try, and we can start to talk to people, because I think that could make a difference. The other thing is, when I'm listening to everyone that's here, I think that the primary concern is, what do we do about the risk? And I mean, in my family, it kept my parents alive. I mean, there's no question about how important it is. So if we didn't get that funding, is it possible to, with the plan that you've got there, say you just built the part that would house the people and house the ambulances to start with, and then build the next bay on with the fire truck or, whatever. I mean, is there a fallback plan in case that government funding falls apart? And anyway, that's my question and my comment.
Big thanks, that the funding chase is important, and that's a great question. Eliza Jane did start some preliminary contacts up in Augusta as we started some momentum on the project. Our presentations to the select board, we've discussed, how that approach should work. Rather than scattershot with all different projects, having separate interests, is it more of a coordinated effort? That's organized by someone in the town, yeah.
Well, I would call Sarah Lawrence, who works for Shelley Pingree. She has been very supportive in the past of being interested in what's going on in the islands. She attends the Main Island Coalition meetings, or at least she did. I mean, I haven't been involved, so maybe she's not even there anymore, but the last I knew, she was she understands islands. And so anyway, it would be, I really think that that's the place to start tomorrow, if you really want this to happen. Because when we tried to get to qualify for 80-foot ramps for Cousins Island, and what they told us, because what happens is you get a notice one day, and then you have 5 days to get the application in, to get, I mean, it's crazy the way it works. And so their advice was to get everything, like you're saying, get everything organized, get everything ready, because you don't know when that's gonna happen. But I would reach out to somebody in every one of those delegations right now and really start working.
It's not like some of us that are consultants have just, we see jobs coming along, you don't wait for the RFP to come out and start making contacts. Get ready for it, okay? Yeah, Jen.
Jeff Westcott, 62 South Road. I guess I've got 3 questions and I don't expect any immediate responses, but I just want to make it aware, probably to you, the liaison, Richard. Since we become a town, how many people have been licensed as EMTs and are now currently still active? Probably 0. Has it been 30? Has it been 50? Has it been 20? Question. Second question. The town pays for the EMT training. Granted, it's reimbursed by the state. But could we recall the EMTs that get certified to serve a minimum of 2 or 3 years since the town paid for their training? Last question. Of all those EMTs that have been certified and have left the force, has anybody done an exit survey with documentation about why they left? Thank you.
Great question. Okay. Al, do you have any?
I can remember, so no exit surveys, documentation or anything like that. Most of the people just get burned out. Some of the people just aren't wired for fire and EMS. We've gone back and forth with selectmen and the department and everything, and I talked to a lot of other department heads across the country about this. If you say you're gonna take an EMT class, you gotta serve for 3 years, they may say, well, maybe not. I think it's financially prudent for us to actually say, take the class. If they like it, great, we'll keep them on. But I also have a family member that was on the department, and every time the toll went off, blood pressure went up, she got nervous. She tried it for over a year and she couldn't do it. So I really don't want to discourage anybody, because I think anybody that we get, you may not, when I became an EMT, I didn't think I was gonna be able to do it. I'm like, I don't know if I can handle all this blood and everything. And now that I'm doing it, I found that I really enjoy it and I can handle it. So, yeah, I could go on, but I think that answers the question, hopefully.
Drew?
Herman, thank you first of all for having this, it's great to catch up on your work. One thing in the math is not working for me going forward, so maybe you've talked about it, but just didn't present it tonight, but I think you said that the report, actually I read the report, in 2023 suggested that the town office needed 4 times the space, or approximately the whole building. You also said that this plan is probably good for 10 to 20 years, you said. And that would carry us for 10 to 20 years, I think is the way you said it, but at any rate. I know your scope as a committee is looking 25 years out. So my question is, what does phase 2 look like? What does the cost look like? Is this the same $6 million project, but spread out into 2 phases? And where will that second phase come in? And how will we get the town, are you suggesting that we may need to build a new facility for the town offices at some point in that? Because clearly if they need 4 times the space, they're not gonna wait 10 or 20 years for that. So if you could
just let us know what you talked about in terms of that other piece of the charge.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't really touch on the town office plan too much. There is a layout of the existing building. I don't know if it's exactly 4 times as much, but it seems like there's plenty of space to accommodate the needs as the layout, as the architect presented. As well as a possible sheriff's quarters space. So in terms of dollars, if you look at completing the entire project as Port City originally designed, you could, just basically look at the number of, 7.5 minus 3, so another 4 million plus. If we were to build that out in the ultimate state. Realistically, I think we probably might look at the phases. Again, in a more modest approach where, okay, maybe we can get by with a little bit less. It had a vault storage room for a lot of records, which I think is required by Maine state law, but, as time passes, things get more digitized and record keeping becomes different. So I think the program could evolve and maybe we could actually trim some cost of that, just like we've done this approach. As far as timing, you could look at if there is a municipal bond for phase 1, maybe at the time that expires and 1-year time frame would be appropriate maybe to engage some more debt service on it. Again, it's too early to predict exactly how that would work. We have done studies on, and I think when we go to the town office, we would probably take the same approach. What were the highest priority needs? And Port City did do a study for us, related to the restrooms. As you know now, it's a very tiny little restroom. It's not handicap accessible, and we looked at a fairly modest approach to connecting the corridor between the apparatus bays and town office and the public corridor, and then utilizing the existing bathroom space, redesigning that so we have 2 accessible bathroom spaces there, more privacy. So, there are things like that we can kind of incrementally knock off, and if they're, within a price range where we can use reserve funds for that, great. I think the funding is probably going to be driving what we can do going forward on the next phases. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things on the funding and the questions. I think everything that we're looking at here, is long term. That's number one. Nothing that we're recommending is, they'll get done for 5 years. There's nothing permanent. The building that we're in right now is a testament of how long things need to last, in our community. So, I think it's much more of a, how long can we go in a certain phase before the secondary tertiary requirements elevate themselves to becoming primary requirements. I think, the facility committee, when we looked at everything that was necessary, we designed, with the help of Port City, what everything should look like. We solved all the problems. The challenge that we had was all of the problems cost between $7 and $8 million. And we knew that was gonna be a no. It wasn't even gonna be a maybe, it was just gonna be a no, pass, keep going. And so we had, that was a tough day because our mission was to in fact describe what the facilities needed to be for the island community that we have. So to Donna's point, one of Donna's points was, what's the minimum that we could do? And what you see on screen reflects the minimum that we could do, which is a logical phase that gets us the most bang for our buck. And also relieves the greatest amount of tension so that we can move forward. Downstream phases require the movement of things. We can't build out the town without moving the additional, fire trucks out of there. Like and really that's what our focus has been. It's like, what you know, when we, it's the, was it the, you know, you got 3 ducks, 3 logs, you gotta get them across the river, but you can only put 2 ducks in 1 log, you know, kind of thing. So we've gone through that, you know, and then you're seeing the fruit of that. To Donna's point on the congressional offices, that it is something that we have reached out to, not to Sarah, but that's a great connection, thank you. Port City has been very vocal with us with regard to Susan Collins' office. And has even provided us with history on what other municipalities that have made requests and, you know, can do and have received. So we're in line with that, both in the value of our ask and also the importance or the sort of the criticality of our ask, that we believe that we would be set up well to do that. The dependency is that the community has to already want it. We have to vocally say, I want the money from the Congressional Budget Office. And with that ask, that formal ask, it allows them to actually allocate the funds that they have available to them. So we're part of this is trying to get to that point, so when we make that ask, they know we're ready. And then they can say yes if those funds are available. Jane?
Just have a comment and then a question. And I so relate to how I thought this way and this way, but here I am on the, what's that?
Stand on the side.
Okay.
Look at the owl. Then you could do.
Okay, so here I am on the rescue team. I found this really enlightening as a presentation. I'm thinking maybe we need to do a better job educating the whole town, because I can see how people might not understand, like, do we really need to spend $3 million? When actually, it's amazing you brought it down from 6 million to 3 million, because I've looked at the cost of, you know, we're trying to expand the fitness room at the rec center and whatnot, and things cost money. And when you talk to a contractor, it's like, well, that's my estimate for, you know, if you do it this month. If it's gonna be next month, I'm gonna have to give you a new estimate. You know, prices are changing. So I feel a certain urgency to educate you all. As I came on the team, I'm a primary care nurse practitioner, so this was a very different skill set for me to get into emergency care. If somebody is having a heart attack, if somebody has a stroke in progress, if somebody suddenly has an injury and they're bleeding, you don't want me down at Sandy Point, like, oh, I better get out of my pajamas and get in the car. There's a call at the East End. We need somebody ready to go. And right now, you don't really want to hang out in our building. It's just not comfortable as a place to go. I tend to hang out at the rec center. I was on a call today and I was really glad that I was at the rec center because I could be there much more quickly. So in terms of our own volunteers on island, definitely in terms of bringing per diems, which is now a deal breaker, both for us on the team, that there's only 7 of us, and having people come over, we want them to be comfortable. We want them to come back and serve again. And we need a place, we need a safe place with exhaust where there's fire trucks and ambulances and fire suppression. And we need a comfortable space for the team to work. So here's my question for the board. I know there is something called like a lodging tax, because our population bursts in the summer, right? And we have people we don't even know and they're drunk driving or whatever, and these accidents can happen. So we're there to help anybody. But could we have some of the lodging tax that the state collects when somebody rents their house, help pay for this? Because we're here for them because that money should be there to help us do that. Just a thought to look into it. And then could we record a lecture about what you guys gave us tonight? Can we record that to the town? That's my second question.
This will be available on YouTube.
Will be available on YouTube.
Okay.
It's like where.
Okay.
Oh, Donna, do you have an answer? Okay.
Answer, I have a good question.
Okay.
The question about the lodging tax, actually to impose any local taxes, it means that it has to go to the Maine State Department of Taxation, and the legislation don't have that capacity to pull it off. And there's a lot of lobbies that would work against adding an additional tax in a community like this.
Now,
I look at it.
what about, there already is a short-term state tax what is the opportunity to tax into that tax?
I don't know what the short term
It's
is.
a 9% tax on short-term rentals.
There's a 9.5% tax on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And that's also the same occupancy tax that's paid in a hotel.
Yeah.
And, but that's all, none of that is locally accepted.
It goes to the state.
It goes to the
Can
state.
we not get 1% of that back?
Again, that would take, going to the Maine State Bureau of Taxation to get an exemption. And then it has to be passed by the Maine State Legislature.
It would not be a new tax, it would just be
You want the allocation from. the tax.
allocation from the
Yeah.
tax.
Right, I think that is a, accomplishing that is an enormous hurdle
Yeah.
because it impacts the entire state.
Right, but,
I've
We're
talked
here.
to Patty Godfrey's office
Yeah.
all about it.
yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Do you have another?
I may have missed this, but I'm a little confused because I understand what Denise said about the batteries and about no fire suppression and all that. But what I haven't heard is how does this plan address that? Because if 3 fire trucks still stay in the building that can't have a sprinkler and can't have whatever it is to protect it, how is this plan going to help that? The rescue part, I get it, because that will be in the new building, but again. So yeah,
So right now we have all our eggs in one basket, all our fire trucks are in one station. We move one truck across the street. So I'm not trying to dramatize this or anything, but there are fire stations that catch on fire every year. In the last month or two, one burned up in Maine. We'd be able to have at least one truck go across.
so
the
that's
street.
part of the plan.
That's part of the plan, yes.
Okay, all right.
The other stuff's still gonna burn up.
Yes, right now, I mean,
I mean, to be fire like one, that was important. It's all never.
if you
I was confused about that.
you know, the doomsday approach.
No, I know, I saw that, yeah.
So the doomsday side of this, you know, we talked about weather patterns changing, drier and more severe weather and everything. If we have a fire at the fire station now and all the trucks burn out, and it's a dry windy day, which we have a lot of dry windy days, station's gonna burn up, but there's gonna be other things catch on fire, right? The woods, we can't put that out, so it's gonna go to the next house, we can't put that out. It could be catastrophic. I don't, you know, we have to think about it, but.
I think we're all worried because of the trees throughout the island. But I'm gonna make a public plug right now that the town be more aggressive about the fires at Chandler's Cove in that field. Because that is one of the places that we're worried about a fire getting going. I think, you know, that could be burning before anybody even knows that it's out of the. So I'm putting a public service announcement, that's my PSS.
Yes, Chip.
Chip Emery, Bar Point Road. I did, in helping them out, I'm on the finance committee, and in helping research, did some AI research about what they're saying. About lack of volunteerism, the diminishing of that, how difficult it is to find people to do that. Most of you have access to AI. You should do that yourself and ask that question and find out nationwide, what are people struggling with? The other thing, can you bring the chart up?
The column chart.
Yeah, I'm very fond of this chart. But it scared me when I first did it. I'm like, whoa, but, so we, you know, we always constantly ask, what are the priorities? What are the priorities? What are the priorities? My short answer is it depends on how much money you have, what you're gonna spend it on. My longer answer is, what's the priority with all this stuff? It's bodily harm. All this is important, but the bodily harm part of it is, that's for me, my priority.
Anybody else? What are the people that are not here? What are they thinking about? What are they not asking? And how do we, all of us that are here, how communicate what we've been talking about?
Sort of close to that, and I'm ignorant is what, when I walked in here. And I think there are a lot of people like me, that if the question is, how many calls does fire and rescue get in a year? And what fraction of them is rescues rather than fires? I have no clue what the answer to that question. And I bet there's other people too.
I think last year, it was like 66.7% was EMS, which is a little lower than the national average. And the call volume definitely plays into the need for the per diems, but really the biggest part is the coverage. It's the 7 people covering the 24/7, 365. And I think it's pretty straightforward that if we get per diems, we can do 24-hour coverage, that will lessen the burden on the volunteers, and we can retain them. I think that will definitely help. I don't think I'll have much kickback from my team here.
I have some numbers that Denise helped pull together, so, if we look at the third quarter of the last couple of years, in July, August, September. In 2024, we had 34 total calls and 25 rescues. Doesn't seem like a lot, but in 1 year to 2025, as Denise mentioned, we had 51 rescues. We had a total of 68 in the same 3-month period. Last year, we had 51 rescues, so that's a doubling of the call volume. I'm not sure what the numbers are for the summer, but I think they're.
We just had our 72nd rescue call today.
Okay, yeah.
Fireworks.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, it's total.
Yeah, fireworks.
Yeah.
72 call,
Um,
7 today.
so I mean, call volume does matter in terms of if that 51 calls in 90 days, that's an average of 4 per week, and you said some days were multiple call days. It's a lot of stress. The volunteers with radios instead of pillows at night and trying to do various things during the day, and having that kind of volume dealt with just 7 EMTs is, as you say, not sustainable. Jeff?
I guess I'd like to address the community education lack of awareness aspect. I said this last year at the recompense fund. To be part of a community, you need to do more than just pay your property taxes. So you didn't know that there's that in the call, but on the town website, every month there's a monthly report. You can read what the transfer station is doing, what the fire department, what the rescue department is doing, what the harbor master is doing. People will laugh at us because nobody looks at the town website. They look at Bev's page. But if you want the information, go to the town website. Look up the town meeting, look up the agenda, look at the packet. All that information is there. If you want to be part of the community, know what's happening, you have to be part of the community.
Thank you, Jack. And, just to follow up on that, under the facilities committee page on the website is the original Port City study, a summary of the reduced scope project approach that we gave to the select board in April, I believe. And then this presentation will be on. So if you have friends that missed this event or weren't able to watch it live, recording will be available. Well, so yes. Carol.
Okay. So, hi, I'm calling Rose. I'm not a full-time resident, but one, I appreciate the presentation, very thorough.
I appreciate the attempts to scale down the cost and I appreciate the need. I have two, I guess, one comment, one question. My comment is, to Jeff's point, I understand that to be part of a community, it takes effort. But being a summer resident and being part of another community, I want to point out that sometimes it's helpful to make it a little bit easier for those of us who aren't here full time. So I love Deb's page and I am starting to use the town website, but it has taken me a long time to get involved with that. And I think there's a lot of opportunity and resources in terms of the summer people that are here, that if we can make information more available to them to volunteer more, I think that's a great thing. My second question, which I brought up to you the other day, Ralph, is that I'm not understanding the costs of the per diem EMTs. And I kind of come from a family of medical professionals that use per diems, like hospitals, practices use per diems. So surgery, nurses, whatever. It's wicked expensive compared to hiring an individual. So a lot of hospitals and places like that are not going, they're cutting back on per diem and trying to hire staff. So I would appreciate some kind of breakdown or discussion of that in terms of cost and how that might work in this model.
Yeah, no problem. So it's like a little bit comparing apples to oranges, because per diems mostly in the nursing field, mostly traveling nurses, correct? Where this is a whole different animal. And it's definitely, you can talk to any fire chief anywhere in the country, any town manager or anything. Per diems in this field, it is way cheaper than hiring full time. There's no benefits or anything. But yeah, that's the progression. I've seen this happen in towns over the years, you know, Cumberland used to have 50 people on a volunteer roster. Yarmouth was pretty much the same. And they're going through change of hiring. They started out with per diems and now they're full-time staff with per diems. Yarmouth is having a hard time. I know last week or the week before, they had a working structure fire in their town during the day. And they had one person and 3 living students show up to the working structure fire. Now, 20, 30 years ago, that would have been 40, 50 people showing up right off the bat. They had to go as far as Portland. They had 2 trucks from Portland coming to help in the fire in Yarmouth. So it's changing. And we're no different. We're just changing. We're on the tail end of it, or the beginning of it.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Carol.
Just before we leave tonight, and I'm sort of saying this as a member of the community, but also as a select board member. I just really want to thank Fire and Rescue for all their time and efforts on behalf of the community, because we do all rely on them and it's them showing up to town. So I really, as we talk about the abstract aspect of the facility, I think we've got to also remember the people. And I think it is quite a strain. The select board's been very concerned about being down to 7 EMTs. So anyway, I think the community owes them quite a bit of gratitude for their dedication.
Just a side note, if you're here in the summer, you can still become an EMT and volunteer in the summer.
But it
So I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I looked around to see who was here tonight. And we have a major problem just engaging the people who live here year round. And I've been really thinking a lot about it because it was my responsibility when we became a town to figure out how many volunteers we had. And did we have the capacity to become a town? And we had over 100 people who were serving on at least one volunteer board. And now everybody, you know, every organization's having the same problem. And, you know, when you try to take the view from the moon and look down here, you start to see. Last Saturday, when you think about all the different things that happened on Saturday, just here in the summer. They had 2 yard sales. There was an art walk, there was a concert, there was a birthday party, and then something else.
The fire department.
Yeah. So my husband's cousins came, and so I said, they said, what's going on today? Go to soup or whatever. And so I told them all this stuff. We never got to anything because we went to eat lunch and we sat down on the shore and that was it. But it made me start thinking about it, and it made me start thinking about, and this is not something that's happened overnight, the lack of engagement on the part of the people who live here year round. And I don't know if it is because people feel disenfranchised. I don't know whether they don't have the confidence. This has been going on for a long time throughout my life, but it's gotten to the point where we're at a critical mass. And when I read the results of the survey that we just did for the comprehensive plan and saw that there were a lot of people who come in the summer who are our dear friends who feel like they don't have a say or whatever. I've said this many times. You can become a resident of Shebig. Maine has a very, very liberal residency requirement. But that means you can't go to Florida and get that deal. You can't, you can't vote in Boston if you were going to vote on Shebig. So you do have that opportunity. So I'm trying to, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get people, but part of it is we're causing our own problems by having all these competing things at the same time. Somehow we've got to have a clearinghouse. And I don't know how to do it, but anyway, but I do think we need to figure out how to engage the year-round community.
We've been trying to do that, and we've discussed that in our committee, numerous times, and I think we're all excited to see this many people in the room. We all wanted everybody to show up and ask questions so that we just make an educated decision. It really is. It's just listen to the facts, and if you don't want to spend the money, well, just be aware that the potential for waiting an hour for an ambulance, it could happen. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but that is real. And I know we do a lot of surveys and studies, and I personally, I hate surveys and studies because it quite often looks at a very narrow view of the actual problem. There's a lot of peripheral issues, like, the fire and rescue, they're doing great. Well, with the product that we're giving you seems great, but what we're doing behind the scenes to make it all happen is we're doing way more with way less, and it's not sustainable. So that's the educational part.
Yes, Ellen.
Well, I'm really proud to be an EMT, and I am the oldest one, and there are a few other EMTs not far behind me. But it's an honor to do it, so I throw down the gauntlet. There's a class at SMCC which is available. It's free, it's paid for by the state of Maine. There are additional expenses that would be covered by the town. Talk to me. I've been texting everybody tonight about that class. So it's a great way to be involved. And so if you're a seasonal person and you're heading home in October, well, you could do the whole thing hybrid. Just saying. You need you. If I can do it, you can.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, everybody doesn't have anything else, or if you don't have Mark, and probably a good way to finish. Thank you, Lance, for that.